Congress has passed a short-term spending bill to avert a partial government shutdown just a day before the deadline,
in hopes of cementing an agreement to provide military funding for both Ukraine and Israel while cracking down on illegal migration across the US-Mexico border.
All of a sudden, we learn that there is no money to fund the government. There are no funds to support allies in Ukraine and Israel. There are no funds to control the Mexican border and stop the opioid crisis. And the same pattern, the same story, we can see it not just in the US, but across the Western civilization. So what happened to the prosperity and financial stability of the past? Where did we take the wrong turn? Back when I was running my research in behavioral economics at Columbia University in New York, I came across an obscure article by Peter Noble, a nephew of Alfred Noble, the founder of the famous Nobel Prize. The article was called "The Cuckoo in the Nest of the Nobel Prize," and it described how greedy stock speculators and bankers created a fake Nobel Prize and used it to extract profits. He said, and I quote, "The economics prize has nestled itself in and is awarded as if it were a Nobel Prize. But it is a PR coup by economists to improve their reputation." As an economist myself, I got intrigued and started digging, investigating this matter further. If only I knew how deep this rabbit hole was. What I found in the decades that followed truly shocked me. And this video is a story of how the fake Nobel Prize, the Cuckoo Nobel Prize, has destroyed our financial well-being and sold our next generation. This story starts in 1888. The legend said that Alfred Noble, one of the greatest inventors of the 19th century, has read his own obituary. It was his brother Ludwig who died, but reporters mistakenly thought that it was Alfred. And that's how Alfred Noble got a unique chance to learn what the world thought about him. And to his shock, he learned that he would be remembered not as a philanthropist or genius, but as a dynamite inventor. A merchant of death, the newspaper called him. Deeply shocked, Alfred Noble drafted a will in which he gave nearly all his fortune to establish 5 prizes. One in physics, one in chemistry, in medicine, literature, and in peace. 5 prizes. These awards, he wrote in his will be given to those who have conferred the greatest benefits to humankind. Now, 120 years later, Nobel Prize has become a synonym for integrity and world's best scientific achievements. Alfred Noble would be proud.
This year's Nobel Prize for Economics is heading to the United States.
Economics is the study of the real world, and this year's Nobel Prize in Economics recognized the efforts to change behaviors to influence that.
Let's look ahead to next
Single
hour.
best chance.
Yeah, when we get the Nobel Prize in Economics.
Wait, what's this? This doesn't make sense. Nobel Prize in what? In economics? Oh, hold on. Let's take a look at the wheel. So, prize in physics, check. Chemistry, medicine, literature, check. Peace, check. What the heck? There's no economics. Here's what happened. In 1968, a group of central bankers approached the Noble family. The bankers wanted an additional prize to be established, a Nobel Prize in Economics. They offered money. When Noble family said no, they threatened to impose tax on Nobel Prize. It was a clear case of racketeering. Noble family tried to fight the bankers. They said Alfred Noble was against economics and he would never agree to let economists use his name. He despised those who put their profits above the interest of society. Bankers backed off, but then returned and established a parallel prize. It was called Sveriges Riksbank Prize in Economics Scientists in the memory of Alfred Noble. You see, remember this phrase, it's a key phrase, in memory of Alfred Noble. The bankers even hired the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences, the same organization that Alfred Noble asked to administer Nobel Prize in Physics and Chemistry. For your information, that Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences also administers more than a dozen different, completely unrelated awards, including an award, for example, for crystallography. So it's some sort of an award wholesaler and administer for hire. So the bankers got it all set up, and starting from 1969, this in memory of Alfred Nobel Prize has been awarded on the same day and in the same building, and even by the same administrator as regular Nobel Prizes. And then each year, when the news announced about the award winners, something really strange happens. Instead of calling it the actual name of the award, which is a Sveriges Riksbank Prize in Economic Sciences in the memory of Alfred Noble, so instead of that, they call it simply, yes, they call it Nobel Prize in Economics.
He is one of 3 winners of this year's Nobel Prize in Economics.
Let's look ahead to next
Single
hour.
best chart.
Yeah, when we
Excuse
get
me.
the Nobel Prize in economics.
This year's Nobel Prize for Economics is heading to the United States.
And this year's Nobel Prize in Economics.
Go and try to find an honest article or video about that award. An article or video in mainstream media where the title would be not Nobel Prize and Award in Economics, which is again is a fake name, but the correct name, that Sveriges Riksbank, whatever. If you do find any, please put a link into the comments. It would be very interesting to see. Nobel family tried to object and resist the fake Nobel Prize. They called it the cuckoo in the nest of the Nobel Prize. But nobody listened. Nobody cared. For those of us who are not closely familiar with the life and modus operandi of cuckoos, here's a quick debrief. Cuckoos are birds that neither build nests nor feed their chicks. Instead, they lay one egg into someone else's nest and then just simply fly away. And the unsuspecting host bird raises the cuckoo chick. It is a typical case of breeding parasitism, a very common strategy in the wild nature. If you want, you can spend 4 minutes of your life and watch this great clip about cuckoos. You will learn a lot about nature's tricks. And there also will be a link at the end. Okay, you may say here, this is all sad and very unfortunate, but what does it have to do with the missing money and the sold future? We fast forward into mid-2000s. This is when bankers invented a new financial instrument. It was called mortgage-backed securities. It so happens that back then, fresh from the Humboldt University in Berlin in Germany, I actually was one of those bankers. Don't ask me how that happened, it was an accident. But I, in fact, was structuring and modeling those mortgage-backed securities, so I have seen them from the inside. I will not dive into details about these mortgage-backed securities how they look like. This is not important here. But those who are interested, you can go and watch a big shot.
The whole housing market is propped up on these bad loans. They will fail.
American people are getting screwed by the big banks.
There's some shady stuff going down.
The banks defrauded the American people.
It's a terrific movie, and it's probably the best one, the best thing that was filmed about the subject yet. So the mortgage-backed security is not important, but what is important is how the bankers used them. Because what happened here is that the bankers, they took the money of pensioners, the life savings of absolutely unaware and non-suspecting pensioners, and the bankers started to use that money to buy and sell on their behalf mortgage-backed securities and houses, basically. And there is one very important thing that is specific to the mortgage-backed securities. It is commissions. Just because of the way how the mortgage-backed securities were structured, they generated an absolutely enormous and exorbitant amount of commissions for the bankers. And so the bankers were buying and selling those mortgage-backed securities on behalf of pensioners to each other again and again at increasingly higher price. And each time they were collecting enormous commissions. Basically, it was a pump extracting money from pension plans and giving them to bankers. And over the course of a few years, bankers have extracted trillions and trillions of dollars from ordinary and usually unaware, unsuspecting pensioners. And that's how those pensioners ended up holding a huge pile of overpriced houses and mortgage-backed securities. Here you may say, hey, well, it's actually not that bad, right? At least the pensioners got the mortgage-backed securities, which are almost as good as houses, right? So it's not that bankers defrauded pensioners. Well, imagine you bought a new car, let's say a Toyota car. Is this a great deal? Is it a good deal? Well, on the surface, yes. Toyota is a fantastic car. It's great, very reliable, great car. But what if you paid for this car, say, $1 million? Is it still a good deal? And that's actually exactly what those bankers did. They left pensioners holding those hugely overpriced houses and mortgage-backed securities. And then year 2008 came. The bankers decided to cash out and walk away, carrying their commissions and bonuses, leaving pensioners without money and holding hugely overpriced houses and mortgage-backed securities. House prices started to fall, and suddenly everybody around wanted to get rid of them. I think we all remember that the gloom and the despair of year 2008 was a global financial crisis. This is where the government came on the scene. And the government, which is Feds, led by a person whose name was Mr. Bernanke. Please remember this name because we're going to meet him again soon. So the government and Mr. Bernanke, they started to look for ways to stop the global financial crisis. And most importantly, the government needed to stop the house prices and mortgage-backed securities from falling further down. And this is where Mr. Bernanke came up with a revolutionary idea. He said that the government should buy those hugely overpriced mortgage-backed securities and houses, and that the government should do that at artificially inflated prices. And because that would stop the prices from falling further down, and that would stop the crisis. So that was the plan, a bailout. But to buy those overpriced houses and mortgage-backed securities, government needed money, lots of money. We are talking about trillions, the size comparable to the entire US house market. So where can we get such an enormous amount of money? Let's take a look. Who have we got here? Pensioners. But they don't have money anymore. Their life savings were converted into the overpriced mortgage-backed securities that we know already, right? Okay, so in this case, who else? Oh, look, bankers. The bankers who just got all those commissions and were sitting on a pile of cash. What a lovely pile of cash. It's bigger than Everest, I think. But you know what? It's hard to believe, but for some reason, the government decided to spare the bankers. Our friend Ben Bernanke called bankers too big to fail. He literally told people that if the money were taken from bankers, that would destroy the whole financial system. Too big to fail. So let's not disturb these respectable gentlemen and leave them quietly enjoying their lives. But we still need money. Where can we get them from? Oh, take a look at that. Who's this? Babies. Yes, our future generation. And the government, held by respectable Mr. Bernanke, came up with this genius plan to take money from the babies, from the future generation. And how do you take the money from the future? That's right, you borrow. And then you use the borrowed money to buy those overpriced mortgage-backed securities. Well, obviously, the future generation, which back then were in kindergarten or elementary school, couldn't really protest. Such an easy target. It was like taking candy from a baby. However, when the bankers tried to take the money, some protests started. You may remember the Occupy Wall Street.
1 in 7 children in the United States suffer from hunger. At the same time, we're giving billions and almost $1 trillion to Wall Street just for bailouts.
We were told you work hard, you go to college, you get a job. You work hard, you go to college now, there's no jobs because the folks up there that you say are staring down on us made sure that all the work is going overseas.
Back in 2011, it seemed like Occupy Wall Street would change America. The movement that started in New York City's financial district took over the nation in a matter of weeks.
Those were people who tried to protect the next generation, and they were not few. So bankers realized that they couldn't simply say, "Hey, give us your money." They needed help. This is where they brought in the Cuckoos. The Nobel Prize in economics winners, they took the microphone and they said, "Hey, this is us, Nobel Prize winners, and we're telling you, if we want to save the world, the money must be taken from the future generations and given to the bankers." Well, of course, they did not say it this way. Instead, they called the whole thing quantitative easing. Quantitative easing is a confusing name, a confusing term that they invented to camouflage one simple thing, the transfer of money from the future generation to the bankers, and that's it. And suddenly, when the call to take the money was coming not from the bankers anymore, but from the Nobel Prize winners, the resistance stopped. Nobody was objecting anymore. And the Occupy Wall Street movement faded and dissipated. There was nobody out there anymore standing between the bankers and the babies. Nobody could defend our future. And the rest is history. Mr. Bernanke went to kids and borrowed on their behalf the mind-blowing $10 trillion, even more than that. Then he took this money and used it to buy those overpriced mortgage-backed securities from the pensioners. And by paying the excessive price for those mortgages, the government has stopped the collapse. As a result, the government has become the largest holder of the mortgage-backed securities in the world. So what's the problem, you may ask? The problem is that if we boil down all these complex and convoluted activities, we will see that they hide, they camouflage one very simple thing, that Mr. Bernanke simply took money from future generations and gave a large part of it to the bankers and cuckoos. That's it, as simple as that. And then the bankers, and together with cuckoos, they wasted those tens of trillions of dollars on cars, business jets, women of dubious character, and politicians. And that is how 10 years ago, covered by the name of Alfred Noble, our future was wasted. And now the future has become the present. The payback time has come.
Congress has passed a short-term spending bill to avert a partial government shutdown just a day before the deadline.
In hopes of cementing an agreement to provide military funding for both Ukraine and Israel while cracking down on illegal migration across the US-Mexico border.
The government is on the brink of the financial collapse, balancing between shutdown and hyperinflation snowball spiral. We have covered this in this video right here. So the child has grown up and realized that the house prices around are skyrocketing, and the child cannot even get enough money for a down payment, cannot afford a house. Food prices are rising too, while salaries remain stagnant. So not enough money to protect southern borders. Not enough money to support military allies and stop conflicts in Ukraine and Israel. Not enough money to stop the opioid crisis. All this has the same root, the same reason. This is all happening because the money is simply not there anymore. It was spent back then, in 2008, by the bankers and cuckoos. The future, which is now present that we live in, has been sold off and wasted. And here's the right time to ask ourselves, have we learned anything? Look at this news. It came out just recently.
Former Federal Reserve Chair Ben Bernanke is among the winners of this year's Nobel Prize in economics.
Yes, you got it right. The person who orchestrated and covered the whole scheme has just won the Sverige Prize in economic science in the memory of Alfred Noble. Oh, by the way, have you noticed? Somehow they again forgot to call it Sverige Prize in economic sciences in memory of Alfred Noble. Instead, they simply called it Nobel Prize. The cuckoos did it again. Just like it often happens in wild nature, cuckoos have won. In human societies, breeding parasitism is a dominant strategy too. Dear Alfred Noble, we know that you didn't mean it. You wanted to benefit humankind. Well, but sometimes world is unfair. Sometimes cuckoos win. If you want a separate video about the quantitative easing, because, as a matter of fact, quantitative easing was something very different from what most of us think it was, and it is an extremely interesting topic. So if you would like to learn more, just drop us a comment. And also don't forget to find those like and subscribe buttons somewhere down there. Alright, see you soon and watch out for the cuckoos.